As the incidence of type 2 diabetes continues to escalate with the force of an approaching tsunami, it's imperative to find lifestyle interventions to protect those in its path. This issue deserves a Bill of Rights. People deserve to know that type 2 diabetes and its subsequent life-threatening complications are entirely preventable. According to the International Diabetes Federation, in 2019, over 416 million adults were living with type 2 diabetes worldwide. We know health is a prerequisite for human, social, and economic development. It's imperative we protect it. Type 2 diabetes was described by Dr. Pran Yoganathan as a debilitating, multi-system, non-communicable disease, robbing people of their health and their independence. Type 2 diabetes affects everything from an individual's mental health, their eyesight, kidney and cardiovascular disease, and the risk of stroke. Not to mention the loss of sexual function, with the very real risk of non-healing ulcerations of feet and lower limbs, with amputation becoming a long-term consequence. The IDF estimated healthcare expenditure in 2019 exceeded $700 billion. After decades of simply band-aiding sick care, believing that type 2 diabetes was a chronic progressive disease, imagine the joy of empowering people to take back control of their health, using food as medicine. How disappointing, then, to find the ACLM has published this much-needed Bill of Rights, with supporting resources and educational material as an exclusive document rather than an inclusive one. Incredibly, the conclusions from the majority of the cherry-picked references do not support the bite-sized claims in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's position statement. There are inherent flaws of epidemiology and a healthy person confounder. Positive studies have been omitted from the low-carb discussion, and recommendations of commercially produced soups and shakes. But most concerning is the declaration of no conflicts of interest, despite deep personal beliefs. Where is the acknowledgement that an ancestral diet, which includes animal proteins and fats, is not only a safe option in managing type 2 diabetes, but being used successfully to put it into remission? Where is the acknowledgement that an ancestral diet, one we evolved to eat, is nutritionally complete, focusing on nutrient density and food quality with minimal processing, sourced fresh, seasonally and locally? Sounds a little like American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Dietary North Star, to which humans should strive. But then when you look closer, you see it's an eating plan based predominantly on the biblical Garden of Eden diet. It's vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, which they claim is rooted in science. It's essentially a high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet, and apparently time and space do not allow a full review of the evidence. But we can say with reasonable certainty, animal protein is detrimental to health. Reasonable certainty, because time and space did not allow for a full review of the evidence. But hey, animal protein is detrimental to health. Is the demonisation of animal protein and fats simply an undeclared bias because the authors are either ethical vegans or adherents of the biblical Garden of Eden diet, in keeping with the teachings of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Fruit, nuts and seeds constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator. It's important to understand that the authors and facilitators involved in the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Diabetes Bill of Rights, their Type 2 diabetes position statement, and the accompanying online course for health professionals, published in 2020, claim the health benefits of cereals, grains, nuts and soy as the gospel truth, while simultaneously casting strong doubts on meat eating, even suggesting animal protein and fat are the cause of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease and cancer. Therefore, a Diabetes Bill of Rights is a big call because it's virtually impossible for them to consider the health benefits of a low-carbohydrate diet, let alone a low-carbohydrate diet that includes animal proteins and fats, as an option in reversing type 2 diabetes. So when they claim you have the right to be given accurate, complete and unbiased information about type 2 diabetes, prediabetes and insulin resistance, I would argue religious beliefs deny a well-rounded discussion of all the dietary options available for the remission and reversal of type 2 diabetes. The following discussion will help determine the inaccuracies and the bias of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's high-carbohydrate, vegan dietary recommendations. To me, it's essential to acknowledge the role of low-carbohydrate diets in the management of type 1 and type 2 diabetes, which have not only been downplayed, ignored, and criticised, but even dismissed by the authors and facilitators of the ACLM's position statement, the Bill of Rights, and the companion online course. If you think about it, an inclusive document looks beyond personal beliefs to offer a complete and unbiased document and to truly help to empower all people to take back control of their health. I respect each and every individual's belief and their right to choice. Discovering religious ideology and the corporate church's influence on our dietary and health guidelines was completely unexpected, as was the pro-cereal, grain and anti-meat rulebooks, which both my husband Gary and Professor Tim Noakes in South Africa appear to have come up against when reported to their medical regulators by dietitians in 2014. I'm not opposed to those who choose to be vegetarian or vegan for cultural reasons, health concerns, ethical beliefs, nor for their religious ideology. My concern is that choice is being taken away from you and I by those creating and protecting the dietary rulebooks, taken away from people who choose to follow LCHF and keto principles and who choose to include animal proteins and fats in their diet for their health. I try to stay respectful, but I can't stay silent. Let's consider the terms reversal and remission of type 2 diabetes, because the ACLM and many other people appear to use them interchangeably. Reversal is defined as an HbA1c less than 6.5%, achieved without diabetes medications. Remission is defined as an HbA1c less than 6.5 achieved without diabetes medication and maintained for at least 1 year. Imagine if the goal was normal blood glucose, and where the HbA1c is equal to or less than 5.6. There are currently 3 accepted ways to put type 2 diabetes into reversal or remission. Bariatric surgery. But this is a surgical intervention which involves operating on a healthy organ for a dietary disease with associated risks. A VLCD or a VLED, a very low calorie or a very low energy diet, where they use commercially processed soups and shakes as meal replacements. The other option is a low-carb ketogenic diet, fresh local seasonal foods that are minimally processed and providing essential nutrients necessary for good health. The recently published Abbott ebook suggests that once that target weight and glycemic control is achieved, reversal and remission of type 2 diabetes can be maintained using either a Mediterranean diet, a vegetarian plant-based diet, or a low-carbohydrate diet, with or without intermittent fasting. Dr. Russell M. Wilder understood from 1916 that diabetes was a disease of carbohydrate intolerance. And he used a ketogenic diet in the clinical management of diabetes even before its use in the treatment of epilepsy. Wilder's protocol for individualizing therapeutic carbohydrate restriction below 60 grams, combined with intermittent fasting, enabled patients at the Mayo Clinic to control their blood glucose, as outlined in his book, A Primer for Diabetic Patients. The Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, or the CSIRO, is an Australian government agency responsible for scientific research, and they've been investigating the health benefits of a low-carbohydrate, higher-protein diet since 2005. They claim it's reducing the burden of type 2 diabetes, and the research results are groundbreaking. A 2018 study discovered exceptional glycemic control of type 1 diabetes, with low rates of adverse events reported in children and adults consuming a very low carbohydrate diet based on the protocols of Dr. Richard Bernstein. Dr. Bernstein was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1946 at the age of 12. For more than 2 decades, he described himself as an ordinary diabetic dutifully following conventional wisdom, which was a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet, which he says nearly killed him. Dr. Bernstein, now in his 80s, is living proof of the success of a low-carbohydrate method outlined in his book, Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution, which was first published in 1997. His methods have inspired thousands of people to maintain normal blood glucose levels and reduce the risk of long-term diabetes complications. Here, the American Diabetes Association's CEO, Tracy Brown, revealed her success with a low-carbohydrate diet in an interview, talking about how seriously she takes the responsibility of being the poster child of how to thrive while living with type 2 diabetes. In a tweet, she thanked Dr. Richard Bernstein and his book, noting, reducing carbohydrate intake has had such a profound and positive impact on my health. After discontinuing her use of insulin and significantly reducing her prescription medication, Tracy Brown hoped she'd be able to drop her last medication by the end of 2020. I'll have to see if I can find out if she did. David Dykman is also speaking this weekend at the Low Carb All-Stars. He's an incredible young man with type 1 diabetes who has used Dr. Bernstein's very low carb protocol to manage consistently normal blood glucose for 7 years. Congratulations, David. So I guess we need to define a whole food plant-based diet. The team at Diet Doctor does it brilliantly. Here they demonstrate a low-carb ketogenic version that provides all the essential nutrients, vitamins and minerals needed, without supplementation or industrial fortification. ACLM's latest resources depict their version of a whole food plant-based diet, with recommended supplementation. But look, it's completely devoid of animal protein and fats, even for children. I understand this is their belief. But where is the transparency for those who do not ascribe to the dietary teachings of the Seventh-day Adventist Church? Oh, and as an aside, as I delve into all my research, I found T. Colin Campbell, author of the China Study, claims to have coined the term whole food plant-based in the 1980s to euphemize a vegan diet and make it more palatable. So why should an authoritative, well-orchestrated rallying cry to adopt a vegan diet be of concern? Well, 3 reasons come to mind. Firstly, an undeclared perceived conflict of interest regarding the demonization of animal protein and fats based on religious ideology. Secondly, the biblical dietary beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church are being pushed onto an unsuspecting public as the gospel truth. Which makes me question, is medical evangelism of the Adventist health reform message being used as an entering wedge to the church, a violation of medical ethics? Conflicts of interest influence people's views and in turn their recommendations. If you're dressed in purple, perhaps with a mitre, and sign yourself as a bishop, you do not need to declare your religion as a competing interest. It's plain for all to see. But if you have a religious faith that is not apparent, and you're participating in a debate or creating public health guidelines on an issue affected by religious belief, for example, nutrition, then you should declare that competing interest. From 1863, Ellen G. White, the prophetess of health, founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, determined the care of health was a religious duty, and she warned of the physical dangers of eating flesh meat, especially pork. She was told in vision that eating flesh meat would stir baser passions, leading not only men, but women and children to the act of self-vice, or masturbation. This was considered to be the ultimate sin known to man at that time. She also taught it's the duty of the church to actively engage in public health education, to control impure desires and baser passions. Her teachings continue to influence the advocacy of a plant-based vegan diet as acknowledged in the publication, The Global Influence of the Seventh-day Adventist Church on Diet. It was co-authored by Joan Sabat, a member of the 2020 US Dietary Guidelines Committee and a founding member of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. The paper is an historical perspective on the ideology of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and their subsequent influence on nutrition science and dietary guidelines worldwide. Not only does it summarize years of my own research, but the authors even acknowledge some of my work. It has been clearly presented to me that God's people are to take a firm stand against meat eating, said Ellen G. White in 1863. Again and again I've been shown that God is bringing His people back to His original design. He would have us teach people a better way. No meat will be used by His people. Not only did Ellen G. White teach grains, fruits, nuts and vegetables constitute the diet chosen for us by our Creator, she also insisted, among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine is a highly influential non-profit organisation with a rapidly expanding membership base across the United States, into Australia and around the globe. Members include primary care physicians, specialists, researchers, professors, students, public spokespersons, hospital administrators, nutritionists, health coaches, public health professionals, and as they say on their website, many others. The authors of the ACLM position statement declared no potential conflicts of interest with respect to their research, authorship, and/or publication, despite their personal beliefs. They do acknowledge financial support from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, the ACLM, an organisation co-author John Kelly MD founded in 2003, which sort of suggests it's a conflict of interest. But let's not go there. John Kelly founded the Christian Association of Lifestyle Medicine on the Loma Linda University campus. In 2004, it officially became the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. At the time, all 9 office bearers and directors were members of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The presentation Lifestyle Medicine, Evidence-Based Medicine for the 21st Century, was created by John Kelly MD. Again, the lead author of ACLM's Type 2 Diabetes Position Statement. And he referenced Ellen G. White, the Bible, and the Adventist Health Reform message in his citations. The presentation not only outlines a brief history of lifestyle medicine in Genesis, but claims it was lifestyle medicine when Adam and Eve were given a vegan diet. God gave the light on health reform, and those that reject it reject God. This is what Seventh-day Adventists believe is evidence-based medicine. John Kelly also co-authored the Lifestyle Medicine Board Review Manual and spoke over and over of evidence-based lifestyle medicine, that which is found in the Bible, and through the inspired interpretations of the Scriptures by Ellen G. White, who is considered the authoritative and continuing source of Bible truth. Evidence-based lifestyle medicine is young earth creationism. It's a belief in the literal 6-day creation and that the Garden of Eden diet given to Adam and Eve is the God-appointed diet for man. Ellen G. White said, the Bible is not to be tested by men's ideas of science. Why? Because science, falsely so called, thereby placing that which was created above its creator. Remember, Ellen G. White said God gave the light on health reform, and those that reject it reject God. Co-authors of the ACLM position statement include Seventh-day Adventist John Kelly and Gregory Steinck. Michaela Carlson is the director of the Lifestyle Medicine Economic Research Consortium, the LMERC, which was established as a joint venture between the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the Lifestyle Medicine Institute, which is the developer of CHIP. The Complete Health Improvement Program sits under the umbrella of the Seventh-day Adventist Church's commercial arm in Australia. The Sanitarium Health Food Company. It's afforded religious charity status and as such pays no tax on income received from facilitators or participants of the CHIP program globally. So what does CHIP look like? While the Sanitarium website claims CHIP is not a mandate for vegan or vegetarian diets, their facilitator's guide shows pretty clearly what the Seventh-day Adventist Church's position is on stimulants, with meat, dairy, and eggs heading the list for the worst possible health outcomes, higher up the list than processed food or alcohol. Adventist Dr. Hans Diehl was the founder of the program, and he acknowledged he is 100% vegan and CHIP is total vegan. Probably that means 100%. Up until December 2020, CHIP was endorsed by the International Nutrition Research Foundation, which was incorporated in 1989 by Hans Diehl. So he was endorsing his own program. Yep. Sanitarium's CHIP sponsors and partners with many Lifestyle Medicine Society events, offering to run facilitator courses. Ellen G. White came to Australia following a vision she had where an angel told her she saw a publishing house here. Over the next 10 years, she helped establish not only the Seventh-day Adventist Church and the Signs Publishing Company, the Sydney Adventist Hospital, primary schools, and Avondale College. She also wanted to reproduce Kellogg's cereal model, founded by John Harvey Kellogg at the Adventist-owned Battle Creek Sanitarium. But this time, have the church own it. While here in Australia, Ellen G. White wrote, "The health food business is to supply the people with food which will take the place of flesh meat and also milk and butter." But I digress. Having set the scene for the pro-cereal grain anti-meat messaging, it's time to take a closer look at the so-called evidence base. The justification used to determine the dietary recommendations by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, knowing the ultimate goal in the management of type 2 diabetes is to control hypoglycemia and prevent acute and long-term complications. This screen grab highlights the ACLM's cherry-picked studies and excerpts to create the illusion of aligning with their beliefs and suggesting a low-carbohydrate diet is not a healthy nor a safe option in the reversal of type 2 diabetes. Let's have a look at some of the references a little bit more closely. Dr. Andreas Einfeld, diet doctor, explains in this study, researchers fed mice, ! A keto diet for 3 days! Exclamation mark. They fed mice a keto diet for 3 days. That's basically it, he says. Reference 79. Adding more fat to a high-fat diet only exacerbates hepatic insulin resistance. Now, in mice fed a keto diet for 3 days because, incredibly, this Journal Club article simply rehashes the findings from reference 78. That's all it does. A nice repeat reward. Reference 80 acknowledges the attitude to high-protein diets is controversial. No long-term prevention studies with a high-protein diet exists. Concerningly, they state, one argument not to recommend high-protein diets in the long term is that this kind of diet may cause concern when adjusting dietary patterns to a lower protein intake when necessary. For example, regarding the development of renal disease. Well, what happens if a normal or higher protein diet avoids the complications of renal disease? Reference 81, again hinting at safety concerns of a high protein diet. The conclusion from the study suggests otherwise. Negative effects of a high protein intake could not be established. Apparently, a primary problem of most studies is the poor compliance of study subjects with the recommendation of lower protein intake. So the problem isn't the high protein. The problem is the poor compliance of study subjects who don't want to eat a low protein diet. Reference 82 sees ACLM claiming higher intakes of red meat and processed meat products have been consistently associated with the increased risk of type 2 diabetes. Well, there are 3 obvious flaws of epidemiology. The first one is association is not causation. Relative, not absolute risk, and the healthy person confounder. Let's just take a look at the results they got. So, ignoring the fact that this review of meta-analysis relies on food frequency questionnaires, diet history, and a 24-hour dietary recall, which come with their own inherent flaws, the collated table clearly demonstrates the evidence of associations between red meat, unprocessed red meat, well, I'm not quite sure what the difference is, and fish and seafood with the incidence of type 2 diabetes are all very similar. I highlighted it with a nice red bar. And I don't know why red meat is more of a risk than unprocessed red meat. But anyway, there you go. Which begs the question as to why red meat has become so vilified. If anything, people should be worrying about hot dogs, especially the white bun and the sauces, the French fries doused in polyunsaturated seed oils, and the side of Coke. This is a highly processed recipe for disaster. Reference 83 sees a series of systematic reviews and meta-analysis in a study that, again, does not support the claim of higher intakes of red meat and processed meat products. In fact, red meat's not even mentioned in this article. It's about fibre. Before discussing what may or may not be a healthy dietary pattern in reference 84, it's worth mentioning the conflict of interest statement accompanying this article is illuminating. And even so, the authors concluded, we have a high certainty of evidence that type 2 diabetes is preventable by changing lifestyle. A high certainty of evidence, changing lifestyle. But additional well-controlled intervention studies are needed to identify the optimal diet to prevent type 2 diabetes. Well, when you've got all those conflicts of interest, it's hard to work out what diet would be a good one. By the way, references 60 and 61 appear to have been ignored in the low carbohydrate section altogether. Instead, they lie obscured in the history section, where they sit without acknowledgement of their positive results. Reference 60 was actually published in October 2018, not before the invention of insulin, as the positioning within the ACLM article sort of infers. Eric Westman's findings was that the ketogenic diet substantially reduces the glycemic response that results from dietary carbohydrates, as well as improving the underlying insulin resistance. Reference 61, the effect of dietary carbohydrate restriction on lipid abnormalities was examined in 42 newly diagnosed maturity onset diabetics. The findings, the plasma lipids reverted to normal in half of these patients after dietary treatment for just 1 month. Specialized and complex diets and lipid-lowering drugs were unnecessary in the majority of patients. I have to ask, were these two studies omitted from the low carbohydrate discussion because they didn't fit ACLM's cherry-picked narrative? The religious justification used to determine the dietary recommendations of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine's Diabetes Bill of Rights fails to provide accurate, complete, and unbiased information. When I heard Georgia Ede describe the Eat Lancet report a couple of years ago, her words really resonated with me. I see so many similarities with lifestyle medicine. It's true. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine has a seemingly endless benevolent agenda that wards off criticism. However, there is a distinct lack of transparency and a perceived conflict of interest around their promotion of exclusive plant-based diets. It's about hope and empowering people to take back control of their own health. As my dear husband, Dr. Gary Fettke, says, once you see the health benefits of low carbohydrate, healthy fat principles, you can never unsee them. An inclusive type 2 diabetes Bill of Rights would be encouraging fresh, local and seasonal whole foods, supporting cultural diversity and food preferences, avoiding added sugars and processed foods, thereby offering the best health outcomes possible, including the remission and reversal of type 2 diabetes. Nutrition seems the only science where those who consider evolution are fringe and those who ignore it mainstream. Bizarre, said Dr. Troy Stapleton a few years ago now. There is no one size fits all. Thank you so much for having me. I loved chatting to you today and hope I've helped work through some of the issues and the misunderstandings. We need a Bill of Rights. People with type 2 diabetes need a Bill of Rights, but it has to be inclusive, not exclusive. Please be noisy with me.
It's interesting, isn't it, Paul, how strongly held personal beliefs can really lead to what we call cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. I mean, once you form a belief, it's so much harder to upend it. And we've known this in cognitive science for years. I mean, I think Daniel Kahneman, the 2002 Nobel laureate, I think he coined a term, paraphrase, that it's utterly preposterous how strongly we hold our beliefs in the face of very little evidence. And it's just human nature.
It seems to be particularly strong in the nutrition world, though, doesn't it?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I mean, somebody like Tim Noakes knows this all too well. If you actually have a read of his one of his books, when he's sort of detailing his experience with the trial in South Africa, he went into his whole discovery of low-carb nutrition thinking that all he had to do was explain the science to people and people would see it like him and they'd say, oh, okay, haven't I been a silly Billy? I've been wrong. I've been looking at it the wrong way. Okay, time to now move ahead. This is what the science is showing. But what he actually found was that the amount of evidence you need to present to overturn a belief is many orders of magnitude greater than what little thought bubble it took to form the belief in the first place.
Absolutely, yeah. It really sums up the whole issue that we've got in nutrition, doesn't it?
Well, it is. It's informed by opinion and not by evidence.